Welcome everyone to the Streaker Podcast. We are the ones that got away. I am Mason Migliara. That is Patrick Previty. I hope everyone is having themselves a wonderful holiday season. Christmas just passed. I hope Patrick, you had a good one. I know I had a pretty good one actually, especially with you know my Miami Dolphins taking a big fat dub over them Dallas Cowboys. That was a great time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you as well. You had a big win for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Jaguars. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out the Bucks, man. The tale of two different franchises this year, I think, right now. Bucks on the up, Jags are just looking like they're falling down. Phenomenal
Yeah.
win for the Bucks, I would say, and looks like they're definitely going to make the playoffs, I think, out of the NFC South. So,
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later, but one thing that I would like to say, NFL man, if they want to, they can own Christmas, man. I mean, the games this past on Monday were pretty good with the Raiders and the Chiefs. That was a very shocking game, I would say. I think everyone can agree with that. I think, in my eyes, I thought the Chiefs were going to just run over and do their thing, but they are not the same Chiefs team that we've seen over the last couple of years. They really just don't have any weapons. Travis Kelsey is distracted. It just has to be. He has to be distracted. Um, so the Raiders going and winning 20-14 in Arrowhead on Christmas Day. That was a shocker and ruined the Christmas of a lot of Chiefs fans, I'm sure. But for the Raiders, they're not going anywhere this year, really. But what does this do for the Chiefs? Like, are they like a one and done type team? Do you think in the playoffs?
ooh, definitely depends on who they would play. I don't know exactly who they're slotted to play right now. Are they the worst division winner technically as of right now? Maybe
Mm,
no, they'd be ahead of the Jags, I think. So
they
they
don't even
would,
have the division officially.
well,
We
no,
could say
no,
that,
not yet, not yet. Right now that
but
they're still in the lead. They're still winning their division, right?
yeah, they're still up by 2 games.
Yeah, they would
So
have to lose out and the Raiders or the Broncos would have to win out, right?
yeah,
I still don't know if I can go one and done. Especially since like considering there's a wild card round now and it's not like they have the first seed or anything. Would be surprised if they can make it to the conference championship game. But
yeah,
as far as one and done, I don't want to go that far. I mean, like you said, it definitely doesn't feel like the same team that we've seen in the past. I mean, the weapons are just not there. It feels like Patrick Mahomes doesn't trust some of the guys that he's throwing to, and that's a lot of pressure on Travis Kelsey, who has
yeah,
dealt with like some nagging injuries since right before the Lions game when he hyperextended his knee. Like he's dealt
sure.
with a lot of different ailments throughout this year, so I can't really put too much of the blame on him, although he hasn't been as sharp as he wants to be, you know?
Mhm.
So that's just something that I never really thought I was going to see with Patrick Mahomes and his receivers.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the playoff right now, like if the season ended right now, it's not. It's a long way from over. We still got a long 2 weeks coming ahead. But if it ended right now, Kansas City would be hosting the Buffalo Bills, and I would take the Buffalo Bills in that game. They already beaten them once, and who says they couldn't do it again? The Bills are on a roll right now, I will say.
Okay, yeah, the Bills are probably the hottest team in the NFL right now. They did just have that super close game against the Chargers. I just think that they were maybe looking ahead at what they need to do. Hopefully, they don't look past the Patriots this week
Yeah,
before they
yeah.
play the Dolphins for the Bills' sake, of course. Maybe, sure you would be happy about that. But I still am hesitant to pick against the Chiefs. I think specifically when it comes to like just the Patrick Mahomes magic and the Bills potential to implode. There is like I
Yeah.
feel like this effect that could happen where Josh Allen could throw like three picks in a game, and then we could all just be sitting there like, damn, we should have chose the Chiefs, or what were we thinking? This is Super Bowl defending champions. Like, come on, what are we talking about? I'm still gonna roll with the Chiefs. I don't want to jump to any conclusions, you know?
Mhm. No, I don't blame you there. I mean, again, it's still a long way away, so we'll see what happens. But that's just if it lined up right now. And then
Yeah.
as for the game in the middle, we had the Giants and the Eagles. That game was a lot closer than I definitely anticipated. I thought the Eagles were just going to run all over and just have their way with the Giants, and it looked like they were pretty early on. But then the Giants made a little bit of a comeback there in the third quarter, scoring 15 points once they took out Tommy DeVito, Mr. Italian man himself. They put in Tyrod Taylor, and he was able to get himself a couple touchdowns. I know Darius Slayton had 76-yard touchdown, something like that, and it made the game close. But are the Eagles for real? Like they won this game 33-25. They took care of business, but are they the Super Bowl contenders that we might have anticipated earlier on in the year? I don't think
Okay.
so.
Well, first of all, moment of silence for Tommy DeVito's career. Thank you. Okay. It is over. Tyrod Taylor should start next week. I don't even know if that's been announced yet, but I probably will.
Mhm.
This is pretty much what the Eagles have been doing prior to their 3-game losing streak that they just had. Which was they got out on teams pretty early. They were up 3-20 at half. And they kind of just gave up their lead, but they never were trailing. Um, and that was just kind of that's just kind of what it was. Like they just didn't blow the lead that they built in the first half. That was exactly how they started the year, and that's exactly how it looks like that they're going to end the year. I think there would have been more buzz as far as like NFC, like who's going to come out of the NFC if the 49ers had won. I think people would have been like more buzzes and people would have been downing the Eagles and would have said like, oh, like this can't even touch the Niners. But I think the Niners look so distraught when playing from behind against the Ravens. And with Brock Purdy's 4 interceptions, I think it kind of took some of the heat off of the Eagles looking like they have all season, which is just a team that comes out the gates, um, you know, bullets ablazing, and then at a certain point looks disinterested, and the other team catches up, and they ended up not paying for it. But this has been the Eagles the entire year.
For sure. It has been. And when with the rest of the season they have coming up, they play the Cardinals and then they play the Giants again. I don't know. Thinking about it, like, could they be at a disadvantage by playing teams like that? Like, let's say they end up getting the 1 seed because San Francisco, we'll talk about it here in a second. They just lost to the Ravens a couple days ago on Christmas. But and then they got the Commanders and the Rams. We'll talk about this soon. The Rams are playing really, really good football, and they have a shot at making the playoffs. So you're playing the Rams in the final week of the season. If you lose that game, the 49ers, you lose that top seed, and then Philly could potentially be the number 1 seed in the conference. So does I don't know. I'm thinking that they could be at a little bit of a disadvantage by playing lesser teams and then having that bye week, and then they're out playing maybe like Detroit or Dallas, for example, in their first round in the divisional round.
So you're saying like they need to like they're playing down the competition right now, and then in that first week they could kind of get like caught off guard by playing
Yeah, that's
a
kind of what
playoff
I'm thinking.
caliber team.
Like, do you think that's possible?
I definitely think that that's possible. I could see them like losing in the first round to somebody. I don't think any team outside of the Niners, in my opinion, despite the loss, are untouchable in that first round. And obviously the 49ers would be untouchable because they wouldn't play. But
Right.
like I don't see any team in the NFC that can't be beat outside of the by any of the teams outside of the Niners. Um I'll say this about the Eagles. I think you make a good point. They're playing the Cardinals and the Giants in the year. I could see the same thing happening in those 2 games that we just saw, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. Um, my thing is though, they still got to win this division, and they're lucky that the Cowboys lost to the Dolphins because that I think takes a lot off of them, like a lot
Oh,
of pressure that they had. I think that they just put so much pressure on themselves. Maybe that's their issue. They're Super Bowl or bust. It's Jason Kelsey comes back. You ran the whole thing back. You got Swift. You made other moves to try to just bolster your team. Just like any Super Bowl contender, you're making midseason moves for veterans who want to join. And for the most part, they've stayed healthy again this year. So I think that there's a pressure feeling. I think that they know this part of the season is just, it almost feels like it should be automatic or it's like the bare minimum, the standard. And that's a scary place to be in because that's how you end up with games like we've seen all year and what we saw on Christmas, where
mhm.
you get disinterested in after a while, and at the end of the day, it's football and stuff can happen. And the other team switches a quarterback, and Tyrod Taylor's playing for, pride and more contracts as a backup in the future. So like that, you get caught like that. Um, I just think that this Eagles team needs to just take it week by week, and they could really, really do some damage, and they could do exactly what they did last year and make a run at the Super Bowl. I think that they are a Super Bowl contending team, but they're one of the teams where I see their floor, in all honesty, being much lower than what you would think for a Super Bowl contender.
Certainly. And now moving on to the aforementioned game on Christmas Day with the Ravens and the Niners. This game was kind of shocking to me in my
I I was
in
just about to say that.
yeah, it was kind of shocking just with how it went. Maybe not the result as much with the Ravens winning, but it was how poorly the Niners kind of played, and especially Brock Purdy. He had four total interceptions. I would say about half of them, so two of the four were probably on him. Um, but again, four interceptions is four interceptions, and then they kind of blamed it on, oh, we had a stinger. No, he got shit on basically. The the Ravens defense was all over him. That offensive line was not doing a whole lot. That was the reason for two of the interceptions. One of them got kind of blocked as he was throwing it, and then I think Humphrey was able to catch that one. And then the other one, that was his last one, he was going to throw, and he got hit on the arm, and then it just kind of wobbled out, and whoever caught it, I think it was Patrick Queen, that got that one. But yeah, the Niners, it was just kind of they just got shit on. Honestly, that's just what it was, and it is what it is. And as for the Ravens, they came out and they played their brand of football. They play a really, really good brand, and Lamar Jackson is, in my opinion, the MVP favorite at the moment. Because without him, I mean, where is this Ravens team? I don't think they have like that many stellar players. I do like Zay Flowers a lot. I think he's been great. But they don't really have a top tier running back. They don't have a crazy number one uh, wide receiver. And then their best tight end, and Mark Andrews, has been hurt all year. They've really been relying on the defense a lot, which the defense, again, has been stellar, as they showed in this game. And then Lamar Jackson has just been, he's been him. He's been great.
Yeah, I mean, there was only so much this 49ers team could hold as far as the turnovers were concerned from Brock Purdy. Like, I feel like how many did he throw in the first half? Did he throw three? I thought he
He
threw
threw
three in the
three.
first. And it was what, 16-12 at the end of the
Yep.
first half? Like, they were more
Yep.
than in it. I mean, and they started off the game pretty well after, Lamar Jackson tripped over the ref in the end zone.
I was just about to say.
Like the 49ers were off to a good start. Um, they just couldn't. I just think that they couldn't take just so much like of the turnovers. There was just too much. And then obviously when Sam Darnold came in, I think that was good for the 49ers because it was just showed that like, oh, they could score on this team. It wasn't some disaster. I mean, it's better that this isn't an NFC team. What's Lamar's record against NFC teams is pretty remarkable too. I remember them showing it on broadcast. I thought it was something, an absurd number, like 20-1 or something, or like 19-1.
Yeah.
It was a crazy mark. So you know what? If the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl, I think that they'll be okay. But not to get ahead of ourselves. You said that Lamar Jackson being the MVP frontrunner. I think this game pretty much knocks out Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
This was pretty
That's good.
bad, but I've been saying that for a while. It seems like, I mean, there's a game that knocked out Dak Prescott, or there's a game that, oh, Jalen Hurts can't be the MVP, or now it's Brock Purdy. I mean, this is such a QB award. It's kind of getting sick and maddening because I just don't know, like, if I really care about the MVP award anymore right now.
Hmm.
Just because I know that it's not going to go to anybody outside of a QB. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, he played well, so like he could still be in it. I don't see why he
Definitely.
would get eliminated from his performance on Christmas, but I would have to agree with you. I just think that the one thing that people are hesitant about is I think that there's first of all, there's this weird narrative around Lamar Jackson. Look, man, yeah, he hasn't had the playoff success, but like we got to look at that through a separate lens, you know? And then I think his stats, um, I it would And maybe he can take the next 2 weeks to kind of fill them out because they're really not like mind-boggling. He's got 3,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's adding like almost 800 on the ground. That's great. But is that MVP? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
It'll
but
be
but
tough.
you make a great point though. I don't know where they would be without him.
Yeah. I don't know where they would be without him. And I mean, I can see this team going to the Super Bowl. I can see them being the team coming out of the AFC for sure. I don't see why not. They haven't done anything to make me think like, oh yeah, they're frauds. Like, no, they really haven't. I mean, every team in the NFL has a game that was like, oh, they should have won this game, or that was just a weird loss. This one for the Ravens, I mean, it was the Colts. They lost by what 3 points in overtime, and then they lost a weird one to the Steelers where it was just kind of like a good defensive matchup. They lost by 7. And then what was their other loss? Their other one
Browns.
was to the Browns a couple weeks ago by 2 points. So that's just football at the end of the day. And once you get into the playoffs, then it's different. And so I don't think that there's a game that it's like, yeah, they're frauds or anything. I believe in this Baltimore Ravens team wholeheartedly, really. Um, and you were talking about how there's always the game that's like, oh well, now this quarterback can't be the MVP. This quarterback can't be the MVP. I think the MVP decision might come down to this upcoming week with Tua uh versus Lamar. I think this game is going to show whoever comes out on top is going to win the MVP. I think. Now, should it be a QB award? I won't say. I'm not to say. I would have no problem with Christian McCaffrey being the MVP because without him, I mean, what is Brock Purdy going to do? He's got a bunch of weapons, but he hasn't utilized them as well. So
Yeah.
I think
When
Christian
one of Brock
McCaffrey could be.
Purdy's weapons are out, it feels like a different team almost, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Tyreek Hill
Tua winning
could
MVP
be.
would be completely different. Yeah, Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill getting like to 2,000 yards or something like that. The Dolphins
That's
winning
going to be
out.
tough,
I know. It looks like he's not going to get it, but like,
like 180 each
yeah,
game, both games.
yeah, no, I just don't see that. But like with the Ravens and Bills, I think him almost getting there or breaking the record, right? What's the record? How far
I
away
think the
was
record's
Calvin
like
Johnson?
18.
Yeah, how far away was Calvin Johnson? If he breaks the record, I know it'll be in 17 games, but
Well,
um,
he missed a game. He
oh,
missed the Jets game,
yeah,
so it
you're
would be.
so right. Yeah.
It would be.
Yeah, I think that that's
So.
more than respectable. That's probably also why his MVP talks have kind of simmered a little bit just because he missed last week. Right? It was last
Mhm.
week? Yeah.
It was the Jets game. Yeah. Yeah,
No.
technically
Yeah, it
last
wasn't
week.
the Cowboys game. Yeah, yeah. So and I think that's why his MVP talks have simmered a little bit. I would say I'd be surprised if it was two. I think if it comes from the Dolphins, it'll be Tyreek Hill. I'll say this about the Ravens. I think that this is obviously a Super Bowl team now. I think we've seen at the very least they had these three weird implosions this year against the Colts, Steelers, and Browns, and you can blame the Browns one on Lamar Jackson because I think he threw a late pick that was bad,
Mhm.
and then the Steelers game was just a mess. They led that whole game. I believe the Steelers were like getting shut out or close to it until like the last like half of the fourth quarter, and then
Yeah.
they just took that game. I remember watching that and being just like, oh God, this Ravens team just got messed up. Like it was
Yep.
just a divisional game that just ended weird. But when I see this team, I think that they have just as high of a ceiling as anybody else in the league, if not higher, because they destroyed the Lions, they destroyed the Seahawks, and they destroyed the 49ers, all NFC teams, though. I mean, shoot, if you're an NFC team, you don't want to play the Ravens, but
Mhm.
they've had that level where I think, oh, they could put something together in 3 games. They could make a 3 game run, or they could, win their divisional game and then have a 2 game run that looks spectacular, or one game. Like I would definitely say, like, oh, if you're if I need to bet something on one specific game, I don't mind taking the Ravens. I'm more comfortable with
Yep.
that, despite the previous like playoff disappointments in years past. I think that this team has a high ceiling.
For sure. I mean, they haven't even solidified it. The only thing they solidified is being in the playoffs. They haven't even claimed their division. They haven't claimed the number one seed. They haven't claimed anything more than a playoff appearance. Same with the Dolphins. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about that Dolphins and Cowboys game real quick.
Yeah.
That game was very impressive. Again, as a Dolphins fan, it was very nerve-wracking watching it. Um, that goal line stop on the first drive of the game, that was insane. Like Deshaun Elliott making that tackle spinning around, I think it was Pollard, at the goal line, and then the very next play was a fumble. That play saved 7 points. And then, Tua, this is just the first drive for each team. Tua had that ball to Tyreek. That was a 90 plus yard touchdown if Tyreek catches that ball. And then he throws it to Waddle, and then I think they end up getting a field goal on that. That's where Jason Sanders this is a Jason Sanders legacy game. Respect to him. He played a hell of a game. As Dolphins fans, there's a lot of people that shit on him. They're like, he's not the guy. I remember when he first came into the league, I was like, this guy's going to be the next Justin Tucker. I always said that. I said that to my dad all the time. I thought he was that good. And over the last couple of years, he hasn't been as good. But in this game, he was fantastic. He had three 50-yarder or farther kicks, and then the game-winning one. But again, talking about the game as a whole, Tua played great. He managed the game well. He had Raheem Mostert who went out. He got hurt. Jalen Waddle got hurt. I just don't understand this narrative that Tua and the Dolphins are bad. They're not. They finally beat a good team. Then the one thing that I keep hearing is Colin Cowherd, man. He is ridiculous. He's like, I think the Cowboys are going to go into Miami and they're going to throttle them. They're going to destroy them. Fake Gucci bag versus a real Gucci bag, whatever the heck it is. And then the Dolphins end up winning on a game-winning field goal. And then he goes, well, the Dolphin fan, all they did, they beat Dallas at home. Woohoo. Like what? You just said that they were going to go in and destroy them. Now you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just there's no accountability from a lot of the sports media people. I know that's kind of what we are, but we are accountable for what we say. I think that we check each other and we make sure that we're accurate. And if we say something is wrong, then we will admit it. I know I will. And again, this Dolphins team beating the Cowboys was fantastic. I remember standing there just like, if Jason Sanders misses this kick, I'm going to be so upset because, again, we have seen it so many times. We're right there, and we just can't finish off that big game, and that's what we did. And now we have to prove it next week and beat the Ravens. I hope it
Yeah.
happens. Now, from
You're
an
right.
outside,
As sports media people, I definitely think me and you, we do keep each other honest, and we do say like, oh, when we got something wrong or when we thought something else was going to happen. That's one of my things where it's like, oh, it's okay to be wrong. Like this entire NFL season, as far as who's going to win the Super Bowl, is a coin toss. I mean, I remember like maybe like by week 8, my Super Bowl pick was Bills Niners. And
mm-hmm.
like that looked pretty bad because at that point the Niners had been on 3-game losing streak and the Bills were just a mess. And now it looks pretty good. It's just been all over the place. I mean, we don't know how this is going to happen. Nobody does. So why, die on these hills? But as far as the Cowboys Dolphins game, I didn't lose any respect for either of these teams. Maybe specifically the Cowboys. Obviously, they lost. I didn't lose any respect. I actually I kind of gained a little bit. I thought that both of these teams played hard and they didn't look bad. And I didn't really see anything in the game that would make me question either of these teams' abilities in the playoffs. I think the Cowboys just, you would have really liked to have gotten that win on the road because
Oh,
it
for
looks like
sure.
you're going to go on the road in the first week of the season and go play the Bucks or in the first playoff
Post.
game that you have. Yeah. Oh, and all your postseason games. But yeah, in that
Mm-hmm.
first wild card game against the Bucks, you're going to go on the road. You would have liked to have that win. I mean, maybe they could get the monkey off their back in the next few weeks. I don't know if they're home in both those games or not, but I think that both of these teams look really good, and I think that the Dolphins are real Super Bowl contenders. The Cowboys play the Commanders in the final week of the season. They go at Washington. So uh, I just think I just think the Dolphins are now, you know what? They're one down, two to go. One down, two to
Yep.
go as far as they're concerned. They got the Ravens and Bills, and they can really show a lot of people what they're made of if they can do that. If they went out and the Ravens go 1-1, they have the tie break against the Ravens for head to
They
head,
would be
right?
number one.
So they
Yeah,
would be the
they would
number
be
one
number
seed.
one.
Plenty to play for. That's a huge game. Two biggest
Yeah.
games, perhaps, in the last 2 weeks of the season, both Dolphins games, I'd say, right?
And
Unless I'm missing.
if the Dolphins lose to the Ravens, then the Bills game is a game for the division because I think everyone can assume that the Bills will beat the Patriots, but who knows because they just lost to uh, the Patriots just beat the Broncos, so who knows what'll happen. The Bills are beatable. The Patriots can win. Now it depends if they want that top draft pick or they're already out of that. Whatever. Besides the point. If the Dolphins lose and the Bills win this upcoming week, then week 18 is all about the division. So there's a ton to play for the Dolphins still. It's not over yet, but it's good that they're in the playoffs. And the Cowboys, yeah, they're going to be just fine. They're still a really really good team. They have a chance to kind of flush that week, and if they go and they beat the Lions this week, and then they go on the road and they beat the Commanders, who knows? Maybe the Eagles slip up, and then boom, Cowboys are right there. We'll see what happens. But moving on to two teams that have been playing really, really well, the aforementioned Bills and the Los Angeles Rams, man, they have been really, really good these last couple of weeks. Which team are you more impressed with at this moment based on how the season has gone for each team?
Okay, well, I think that the Rams are going a little bit under the radar, and that's because they're in like the thick of a division battle. But it looks like that they're gonna make the playoffs regardless, maybe perhaps with the Seahawks, because the Vikings look like they're just falling apart. Um, so I think that they're flying under the radar a little bit. And the Bills are obviously now in the playoffs. And I think that they're just the Buffalo Bills and they just get national attention for some reason, more than whatever they used to, even when they were good back in the day. Um, but with that being said, I still think that while the Rams should get their flowers, I think it's the Bills. I'm so impressed with the way that they've been able to turn things around. When they inserted Joe Brady into the offensive play calling position, I feel like that really turned this team around in a sense. I think that, yes, they had a close game against the Chargers, but they've had some great wins. They've had some close losses, and I feel like they're starting to clean it up. And I'm really optimistic of what this team could do. You know, beating the Chiefs, yes, they're 9-5. Yeah, or what? No, they're 9-6 now.
Nice.
Um, it's not the accomplishment maybe some might think it was in previous years, but it's still the Chiefs, and they still had to go on the road to beat them. And they beat the Cowboys 31-10, beat them down, and now they're probably going to get these two wins over lesser opponents, being one already gotten against the Chargers and then the other one against the Patriots. And then they could possibly win their division in the last week of the season. That's an amazing turnaround. That is an amazing, if you had told them, it's an amazing scenario. If you had told them after the Broncos lost that what was going to happen, I think that they would have easily taken that. Or if they probably would have easily taken that after the Eagles lost. I think that they had a harder road than the Rams did, and that's probably also why I'm going to give them the edge. Um, I just I think both of these teams could be sneaky Super Bowl teams. I think it's so wide open, and it definitely I think for both of these teams it depends on who they play. I think that they
Yeah,
need the right path. I still don't think that highly of either of these teams because I just know how wishy-washy they can be. But I would say the Bills, in all honesty. I think this team has that it factor.
I can't disagree with you there. It's tough to go against the Bills. I mean, Josh Allen, he's really kind of turned the season around for himself as well because early on in the year, he was not looking like that fantastic. I mean, he had a couple games here and there where he was like throwing for 300 yards, whatever, but the turnovers were a real problem. But I think over the last couple of weeks, he's kind of minimized it a little bit. More, he's not been that gunslinger that he's always been and just kind of throwing the ball all around the place. And that results in turnovers. And that just hasn't happened as much these last couple of weeks. I mean, what was the game? Against the Bill or against the Cowboys, he only threw for 94 yards. They just ran all over the Cowboys. So him then being able to win a game against the Cowboys with him only throwing 94 total yards, it shows that they're a long way away from where they were at the beginning of the season. They're way better. They're not the same team. And then as for the Rams, man, I think it's just they've gotten healthy. Williams is back. He's been back for a couple of weeks. I mean, you're right. They have had a little bit of an easier schedule. They did play the Ravens, and that was an overtime game where they only lost by at the end of the game on a kick return, on a punt return. So they very easily could have stopped them on defense, and then they could have went and won that game with a field goal even. So they've been competing with top teams like the Ravens and the Browns. They beat the Browns. The Browns, we'll talk about them here in a second. I mean, they beat them. Was that before Joe Flacco? Let me see. No, that was with Joe Flacco. So, you know, I'm really impressed with the Rams. It looks like they're probably going to match up with the Lions. So that to me is a very, very intriguing game. Did they play earlier this year? I don't think so. No, they did
That's
not.
I think that they could beat the Lions in that first week. In all
Exactly.
honesty, I think that they
I
could.
agree.
I think I'm just not super high or super sold on the Lions. The Lions have had some close games as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe they deserve their flowers because they achieved something this week. We'll get into that later, which was really good for them. But shout out the Lions. But I still think that in the playoffs, I'm a little bit hesitant to pick them to make a run. And I think when they play a team like the Rams, who are just on fire, like you said, healthy now, finally, that has been the key for the Rams. They are healthy, and it's why both of us took them out of our playoff predictions earlier
Yep.
in the year.
Yep.
Um,
Weren't
it's
enough.
why it's just why it's just so important. Health is so important in this league. And to be getting healthy in, game 17 and or game 16 and 17, week 17 and 18, that is just
Hmm.
a different level of an advantage.
Uh, and talk about an advantage. What is going on in Cleveland? Joe Flacco, maybe sitting on the couch for the first couple of weeks was an advantage. For the first, what, 11 weeks, give
I
or
heard he
take?
was a cook. I heard he was in the kitchen, like
Ain't
at
no
a
way.
restaurant. No, I
Oh,
maybe I need to double check it. But I had heard that he was, in his the Bear like era, like he was
that
cooking. I don't know if it was like a restaurant that he owned or something like that, and he was just helping out. That's what I had heard. Maybe I'm
that's
wrong,
crazy.
but I tell you what, yeah, he got straight off the couch, man. And he's just been balling.
And he's been cooking on the field, man. And he found his favorite dish in Amari Cooper this past weekend with what 265 yards. That was if you had him in your fantasy for these playoffs, you easily could should have won. Like there's no way
Well,
he had
you should have won
50.
your fantasy championship this week because there shouldn't be any games going on in these last 2 weeks. As a
You don't think
commissioner,
so?
no, as a commissioner, I tried to make sure that that didn't happen because I didn't want any players to sit. I
Right.
guess no players are really going to sit this week, but I don't want anything crazy to happen. So I always make it. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah,
I
I
have
don't like that. Why would a championship get decided with players sitting? I think that that's so foul.
no, I agree. That's why I think most people do that like week 18 because that's when most people will sit. So, you have it the second to last week of the season. I have one where it's second to last week, and I was so close in mine, uh, with all my buddies and stuff. I was going up against a top guy for the entire season, and it was like a 10-point game. If I would have switched some stuff from my bench to my starting lineup, DJ Moore, he screwed me, and Sam Laporte, was it Laporta? I think it was Laporta. He only had like 4 points. So both of those two having like under 5 points total really screwed me. And then yeah, I needed on Christmas Day, I needed a miracle. I needed the Chiefs to score like 17 points on defense, and that didn't happen. So if I would have had the Raiders though, I would have won. But I kept it close, and it was a good matchup. But yeah, and then there's another league that I have where it's like the 2 week ones. So it's weeks 15 and 16, or 14 and 15, and then 16 and 17 are the championship, or maybe whatever. It's like 2 weeks for one round. So I've had both of them. I've never had the one where you're already over though. Like yours is done.
Yeah. No, it just ended. It just ended. This was the
Yeah,
last week.
last
So yeah.
yeah.
I just think that's fair. Like I said, I just don't want it to be decided by a team sitting. And this year's been so close. There has been people like that have been sat over the last couple weeks of the season. I mean, we just saw Russell Wilson, which we'll get into.
Uh-huh.
Just got, he's done for the year, and that could have been somebody's starting fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, it could have
So
been. You're right. You're 100% right. I might have to talk with my commissioner and make some changes.
it's one less week of fun, I guess, is the
True.
issue.
It's fair. But you want it to be fair for the most part.
Hmm.
But it goes both ways. It goes both ways. But we're straying off. We're talking about the Cinderella story of the season in Joe Flacco. When he came in and played against the Rams, with the Browns, did he come into that game late or did he start that game? Yeah, no, he started that game. And that game, I mean, he still played really well. He threw for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns. They ended up losing 36-19. But since then, man, going up against the Jaguars, who were a favorite, well, for the entire season, one of our favorite teams actually for this season. He went against them, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, crazy. Then goes up against the Bears. They win 20-17. In that game, he has almost 400 yards and 2 touchdowns with 3 interceptions, though. Not very good, but, almost 400 yards. And then this last week against the Texans, man, he just decided, yeah, I'm just going to give the ball to Amari Cooper all game. Had freaking 11 catches, 265 yards, 2 tuds. I mean, crazy numbers and just crazy production out of him. and he's brought the Browns to potentially they have a chance at the number one seed if they win these last two games,
God,
and the
I
Ravens.
would shit bricks, Mason, if that was the
Dude,
case. But
I know, I know. And today's Wednesday. No, so tomorrow night, Thursday night, that's the game. They play the Jets, and it's hard to say that the Jets will beat the Browns, but this is a revenge game for Joe Flacco. If Joe Flacco was on the
oh
Jets
my,
right now, listen, Joe Flacco
I'm
was on the
hearing you.
Jets last year.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers goes down. Zach Wilson isn't cutting it. They could have very easily picked up the phone and been like, "Yo, Joe, we need you to come save us." Because and now look at this. Now the Browns with Joe Flacco are going to play the Jets on Thursday Night Football for the world to see. And
Oh,
listen,
is this
this
Thursday night? This is the last Thursday night game of
this
the
is
year.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the final Thursday night game of the year. This Jets defense is good, man. They're really good. I don't care how bad the Jets might be on offense. That has nothing to do with the defense. And they've played with Joe Flacco before in practice. They know what he looks like. They know his scheme and everything. So it'll be a very interesting matchup, and the Jets can actually help out both the Ravens and the Dolphins if they're able to beat the Cleveland Browns.
Wow, am I gonna have to be? I feel like I'm gonna have to be a Debbie Downer, or rain on the parade. You didn't say anything too ridiculous. You just said the possibilities that could happen over the next handful of weeks. So you didn't make any sort of claim. Where this segment comes from, and this stems from, is me turning on my TV after this week of games, and I saw, are the Browns real Super Bowl contenders? I saw that and I know. It's like, oh, we always take it too far. I don't know if this is like
Yeah,
an American thing or a sports media thing or what it is or just a human thing. But we get so far ahead of ourselves. I think this is such a great story. I just can't possibly see this team winning a game in the playoffs. I really just can't. Even with how great their defense is, like you said, like Amari Cooper had such a great game. I believe that was he broke the record for single game in Browns history for receiving
yep,
yards. Phenomenal. I mean, Joe Flacco's been on fire, career resurgence in a sense for the rest of this year. I just don't see it beyond like the next couple weeks. But I will say they're gonna beat the Jets. They have to. They're just probably gonna shut out the Jets again. What the Jets have had like six shutouts this year. That's absurd.
have they really?
Yes,
Oh my God.
I think it's something very extreme. I've never seen an offense this inept in my life. Um, so I don't know how they're going to score against the Browns. Okay, it doesn't look like they have six shutouts. I don't know where I heard that stat from. Maybe six games without a touchdown. I have no idea. Without an offensive touchdown. Where did I hear this stat? I only see one, but that's neither here
Yeah,
nor there. Uh, see,
it feels like it though.
see, we're
It feels
honest.
like it.
We're honest. So we check ourselves immediately
Yeah,
when I say something ridiculous. But
yeah,
I still think I honestly think this might be a shutout as well, or like they'll score 6 points or something like that.
yeah,
Because they had a few of
exactly.
those. But
They've had a few of those for
but
sure.
I just can't go any further than like this team is going to end what 11-6 or something like that. Who do
I
they play
mean,
in the
they
final week
played
after the Jets?
the Bengals.
Uh,
That's a good game.
yeah, shoot, that's a toss up. I still don't respect the Bengals. Anyway, have the Bengals fallen out of the playoffs? It looks like I believe that they have.
They
I
have,
think the
yeah,
Colts hold the last one. Yeah, so that'll be a good game for some playoff implications. Who I didn't think. I thought both those teams were just going to fall off the face of the earth. And I'm actually, it's now my time to say I was wrong about the Browns. They have recovered. I thought their season was over. They were a part of the group of teams where I said that these are teams falling out of the playoffs. That was the Steelers, Colts, Browns, and Bengals. And
yep.
it looks to be that the Browns are the team that's going to make it out of that. And they're
They
going.
have a better record than the Chiefs, the Jaguars. Who else? Then on the Bucks and the
Yeah, they got a
Rams, the
better record
Seahawks.
than the Bills, too.
Yeah, they're the number 5 seed right now in the AFC. They would play Jacksonville if the season ended right now. Do you think they would beat Jacksonville?
Yeah. But that's also just how terrible Jacksonville has looked.
Well,
Um,
you said that they weren't going to win a playoff game. You don't see them winning a playoff game, and
well,
that
they're
would be
not
a
going to
playoff.
match up against Jacksonville, are they? Oh, wait, yeah, 4-5,
Yeah,
they would. Oh, yeah. Shoot. Well, I could see them winning that. I could see them winning against Jacksonville. I just can't see them winning against Kansas City,
keeping them
Miami, or
honest,
Baltimore.
keeping them honest.
Yeah, okay. You keep me on my toes. Also, Indianapolis is in the seventh seed, so I'm waiting on the Texans to win out and the Colts to go 1-1. And then I would be right at least kinda that the Texans and Bills would make it over those other teams that have fallen out of the playoffs. But yeah, okay, okay, I could see the Browns beating the Jags. I could see
Yeah,
them beating the Jags.
when you start talking about it and you like when you think about it at surface, you're just like, oh yeah, the Browns, they're not winning a playoff game. And then you dig into it and you're like, wait, hold on a second. They would play the Jaguars or whoever comes out of the South in the AFC. Whoever, I mean,
Yeah, that
you
could be the
got
Texans. That could be the Texans. I
it
could
could
see
be
them
the
easily beating
Texans.
the Texans as well.
Exactly. So it's like you don't know who they're even going to play. So it's like, well, when you think about it, but it's hard to say. Like once those lights are bright, but Joe Flacco's been there before. He's won
Hey,
the
Joe
Super
Flacco
Bowl.
won a fucking car.
Yeah, exactly.
He won. What did he win? It was a Kia, right? Didn't they gave out Kias?
I don't know what
I
it
forgot
was.
what car it was, but because he was Super Bowl MVP. Joe Flacco was
Mhm.
elite, okay? He was elite. He was throwing
He
piss
was.
missiles back in his Baltimore days, okay? He has such a strong arm still. He's probably one of the most underrated arms in NFL
Hmm.
history, I would say. Just I mean, he can sling it.
Yeah. That listen, it's possible, man. We'll have to see what happens with it. I'm very intrigued because I mean, shit, why not? Why not the Browns? I don't know if they're gonna make it to the Super
Oh,
Bowl.
but this would be I
Why
look, I'm
not?
rooting for the Browns. Look, I want them. I think this would be an amazing storyline if they would win. And I also think that this does show, and the Jaguars are
That the
going
NFL
through
is
it.
scripted.
Oh yeah, sure. What a script for the Browns. They finally
I
get a
know,
good
right?
script.
Yeah.
I think it shows that like you need a backup QB. You need to be able to take a risk and sign a guy off the street who's talented and can play and has NFL experience. The Browns could have given up on this season. They really could have. And they were like, nah, you know what? We waited too long for Deshaun Watson. Um, we're not going to give up another year just because he's going to be out for the rest of the season. We already, went through the Nick Chubb injury. This is truly like a great
Oh my God,
story.
yeah.
And it also shows you why you need a backup quarterback and you need a guy out there to just handle his business. The Jags don't have a backup. There are plenty of other
Hmm.
teams. It seems like a lot of teams in the NFL don't have a starting quarterback, but there are a lot of backups that have been uh more than good
Capable.
enough to win. Yeah, more than capable of winning NFL games. And I just think that it's so important. I don't know why any team in the NFL wouldn't have a capable backup quarterback, and I think that this shows it. And the Jets should be kicking themselves because they had plenty of
Mhm.
opportunities to get a guy that wasn't Zach Wilson out there, and they didn't do it for whatever reason.
Who knows? Who knows why teams make the decisions that they do? But moving on to the aforementioned Jacksonville Jaguars and then your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These two teams they matched up this past week, and Baker Mayfield, man, he's loving it there in Tampa. As an outside, I like Baker Mayfield. I like his moxie. I like what he brings. He just brings a swagger to a team, and he's like, yeah, I'm the fucking man. I'm gonna do it. And some games I'm gonna shit the bed, but there are gonna be games where I'm gonna be strutting around like Conor McGregor and just doing my thing. And I love that. I like that personality. As a Tampa fan, like, what do you feel about Baker? Do you think he should come back?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna skip around here, because I
Okay.
know we have our New Year's resolutions set because this is gonna be our last episode before the new year. So we had that. I'm gonna get straight to my New Year's resolution, and we could get to yours later. It is to stop doubting my hometown teams, and maybe specifically the Bucks. I've picked against them all year long, and Baker Mayfield arriving has been healthy, and he looks like the guy who led the Browns to the playoffs and a more than capable starting NFL quarterback in this league. And to answer your question, I would love to see him back, and I think he is coming back because I don't think that we're going to be high enough to take a quarterback in the first round unless somebody falls or we decide to trade up. And I don't think we're going to give up any draft capital to make a move in the first round to get high enough to do that. So I think he is coming back. He should come back, and he has embodied a lot of what this team is. And I think that they respect him in the locker room. And this has been more than what anybody could have hoped for. I mean, we started out, well, we were what, 3-1? We had a good start, and then it just tailed off. We had all those consecutive losses, and now we're on a win streak. Season has been a roller coaster, but the one constant has been just Baker Mayfield going out there, and you got to respect the game. You got to respect what he can go out there and do. And it's so impressive, and he's having a good statistical year as well. Um, I love it. The only thing now that I wish as a belated Christmas present from the GM is I need Mike Evans to retire a Buccaneer. I don't
Yep.
even care anymore what the cost is. I need him to retire a Buck. Once again, another great season from him with the changing carousel of QBs outside of the great Tom Brady. He's been so reliable no matter who's back there. And I just love it. It's such a great security blanket for whoever's throwing the ball. I hope he retires a Buck. This has been more than I could have ever asked for. Todd Bowles, low key, also probably saved his job in a sense, too. I think if we had like ended up, not turning it around, he probably would have ended up being fired. Um, or he would have definitely been on the one of the hottest seats in the NFL. This isn't a destination job because we've seen destination jobs open up like the Chargers, um, and potentially the Commanders is going to open up when the season ends as well. Um, so there was a lot riding on this year in a sense where it was like we could have cleaned house, and it looks like we're not going to. And I think that that makes me proud as a fan. So it's my New Year's resolution, and in my long-winded way of saying, I'm really happy that we're probably going to make the playoffs, and that
Yep.
Baker Mayfield's a starter and he should come back. It's just to not doubt these teams. I'm not going to doubt the Magic because I'm a Tampa Orlando fan. You're just a
Yeah.
Miami fan, but to not doubt Orlando, to not doubt the Bucks. I'm proud, man. I could shed tears right now, bro. This is the post Brady era, and I think we're gonna finish with a better record than we did last year with Tom Brady. Unbelievable. Here's to a first round exit, man. So proud. I,
Here's to a first round. I mean, hey, you could end up playing either the Cowboys or the Eagles. So, but you're hosting them.
I would
So,
hope the Cowboys, in all honesty. I know we got smacked against them last year, but we played the Eagles this year, and that was a rough game. So
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's looking good. They play the Saints this upcoming week. So let's say they beat the Saints. I think that would have to solidify it, right? Because that would pretty much knock the Saints out. They would be back by 2 games, and then they play the Panthers in the final week of the season. God, if they lost that game, I don't even know what would
if
happen.
it, yeah, right. If I guess the Falcons could, um,
The Falcons could find a way to sneak themselves in if they
yeah,
win out.
and we split against the Falcons, so
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
could see that.
yeah. So the Falcons play the Bears and then the Saints. So I think that Falcons Saints game would only matter if the Saints won on this week against the Bucks. So we'll have to see what happens there. But again, I am very happy for the Bucks. I like that team. I like Mike Evans. I think that he should retire a Buccaneer as well. It'd just be weird seeing him in another team's colors. And as for Baker, I already said I really like him, and I think he's great for that team. And I like Todd Bowles as well. I think he fits that team. I just think he embodies and the Tampa Bay Buccaneer way in my opinion, for whatever it's worth. But then talking about the Jags, who are kind of on the opposite end of that, we talked about them early on when we started this podcast. We were like, damn, this team is going to be really good, like Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, all of them. We were high on them, and they just haven't panned out to be the way that we thought. You know, right? They just lost to the Bucks 30-12. They got throttled by the by the Ravens 2 weeks ago, 23-7, and then they lost to the Browns a couple weeks ago. And even before that, it was the Bengals. Their last win was against the Texans on November 26th. So they have gone 0-3 so far here in the month of December, which is a bad time to not win because this is the stretch. This is the home stretch. You want to win these games. And now they got the Panthers and the Titans coming up. It would be a real shocker if they were to lose to the Panthers. The Titans, man, I mean, I don't know what to think of them, especially if Will Levis is out. Hill, I think he played in this game last week. Did they win this past week? I don't even know if they did. The Titans. I doubt it, right? Yeah, they
Titans.
lost to they lost to the Seahawks.
Hmm.
That was a weird game as well. But just talking about the Jaguars, I don't know. I see them winning the division just based on their schedule playing the Panthers and the Titans. But then, the Colts, they had a rough one this past week against the Falcons, losing 29-10. They got the Raiders and the Texans. That Raiders team is playing some inspired football. They just beat the Chiefs. And I think they're really behind Antonio Pierce. So that's going to be a very tough game at home. The benefit for the Colts is both of these games that they have coming up are going to be at home. And then as for the Texans, as they play the Colts in the final week of the season, and then they play the Titans this upcoming week. Was CJ Stroud back this week? Did he
No,
play against? No. So is he going to be back? Do we know?
I think now is about the time where he should be coming back. I don't know if I've heard anything specific about him actually coming back. I'd imagine he's practicing right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, but
sure
I
he
agree
is.
with everything that you're saying, though, by the way, with the Jags. This is a terrible time for them. This is really bad. You know, I, I,
But I
I
think,
went on some other shows and I had Trevor Lawrence as my MVP, as my kind of dark horse, but like I wanted to be, realistic. I thought, oh, the Jags are going to get the 1 seed, or if they get the 1 seed, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. That ship has sailed. Actually, that ship is now like, that has been sailing. It's about
um,
halfway across the ocean, halfway
I
across the
think it's
world. It's been gone.
yeah, more like sunk. That thing is deep, deep down in there.
It hit an
It is gone.
iceberg.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I don't know. I think that Jacksonville will end up winning the division because they have the tiebreaker over Houston. So let's say Houston and Jacksonville both win out. That knocks Indianapolis out, and then Jacksonville has the tiebreaker over them. So then that would put them at the top of the division, and then the Jaguars would probably be the 7 seed, I think, in the AFC,
Yeah, well,
depending on what
kind
happens
of
in the Bill
amazing, kind of amazing how tightly contested this division has become.
for real.
Did not feel like after the Anthony Richardson injury,
Mm-hmm.
that this was going to be a hot division. And even the Titans, I feel like are pretty respectable. Obviously, they're 5-10, they're long gone, they're way eliminated. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this entire division is kind of looking up in the future years. I know the Jags are still. This is a mess of a year right now, but they could still make the playoffs, and that would still be a good positive note.
It shall be interesting what happens here in the NFL in these last couple of weeks. I know we'll be covering it. We'll be watching it as well. But moving on, let's talk about the NBA for a split second. What's going on with KD and the Suns, man? Can you tell me? Because I really don't know.
Well, they're your NBA champion
Oh,
pick.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Um,
know.
this is, I would say, the least surprising thing maybe of the
Yeah,
year. I thought that they were going to be better. Look, I'm not going to say like I didn't think that this Suns team wasn't going to be any good, but I'm just not shocked that Katie is frustrated. Not because I think Katie gets frustrated easily, but because they made these moves and they got Bradley Beal. Like you know who you're dealing with in a sense. I've seen this before. This almost exact same thing happened with the Nets a few years ago, where the guys
mhm.
just were never on the court. Now 24 total minutes um at Christmas is kind of wild. That
Yeah,
is surprising to that extent. But I'm not surprised that he's frustrated or he's showing his frustration. I don't know what he wants the front office to do though. They just need you guys out on the court.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, this team, I have no hopes for this team. In all honesty, we've hit the Christmas checkpoint and they still haven't played together at all. I think Devin Booker is more reliable than a Harden or at the time what Kyrie Irving was. So that's a positive. It should be D Book and KD rolling it out. Um, but as far as Bradley Beal, I haven't seen him play in a big game, I think, ever in his career outside of just like a couple early playoff rounds. And that was
yeah,
back in the John Wall days. So like
yeah.
it's been a minute. So I'm not really relying on him at all, and obviously I'm not relying on any other player for the Suns for the most part. But their bench isn't bad, um, and they made some moves for it. I just think it's kind of it. It's almost like I don't know what kind of time or when they're waiting to flip a switch, but
Yeah.
they only could do so much last year, and they ran into a darn good Nuggets team who won the championship. There's plenty of teams in the West, I think that would beat the Suns in a 7-game series, just with the way that they've looked this year.
See, but I think like D Book is fantastic. Katie, like, why can't you just run it with just the two of them? And if Bradley Beal comes back, great. And if not, like, whatever. I think KD and Devin Booker are two of the top players in the NBA. So how is it that they just can't get it together? Is it a KD problem? I mean, it wasn't a problem when he was on Golden State. Is it a him problem, or is it just like shit happens?
I think they just have given up so much to make this what the players that should be on this court to get that team assembled, to get Bradley Beal. Dealt Chris Paul to the Wizards, who's then dealt in the Jordan Poole trade to the Warriors. And then they also dealt in the three-team trade, right? DeAndre Ayton to the Trailblazers. So
Yep.
they've been a part of a lot, and they've given up two guys who DeAndre Ayton didn't want to be there. That was apparent. But Chris Paul was, a very important piece to winning. He just kind of, as each season progressed, he ended up losing his legs earlier and earlier. Um, I just think, yeah, in a sense, they could just roll out there. They could win a playoff series. But when it comes to the real teams in the West, the real finals contenders, I think they could get mopped fairly
Yeah.
quickly because I just don't see them being a team that could handle another team sitting across from them, standing across from them that's deep, and it has that playoff bench. It has those guys that they can rely on outside of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And also, those two guys need to stay healthy. That is so apparent that they need to be 100% come playoff time. They can't have any nagging injuries, and they need to make it to every single game. They can't miss a playoff game. That's a tall order. That's a tall task. That's a lot more pressure than I think that they wanted. And how old is Kevin Durant now? He's had his fair share of injuries.
Yeah, he certainly has. Well, that's our little NBA update. Now that we've passed that kind of Christmas checkpoint, uh, we'll definitely start to cover a little bit more of it, and I will have more of a better understanding because it's just been so busy, keeping up with football and all that. And yeah, but the NBA is going to start. It's going to start coming to the streakers. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get
It
it
will
going.
be
I'm gonna
here
get it
very soon, very soon.
very soon, very soon. But you already talked about your New Year's resolution. I'll kind of play it off of yours. I'm just going to continue having faith in my South Florida teams. It's been a great year, honestly, for South Florida sports as a whole. I mean, let's go try to go in chronological order with the Heat making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. FAU, even though that's not for us, FAU being in the Final Four in March Madness, that was very impressive. The Florida Panthers going to the Stanley Cup, that was outstanding and remarkable. And it made me enjoy hockey even more. I've been getting into it a little, very, very seldomly, but obviously with your hometown team kind of making it to the championship, it piques your interest, and it definitely did that for me. And I've been paying a little bit more attention to hockey over the last couple of years. Um, and then after that, you had, my sport, baseball, the Marlins making the playoffs for the first time in a full 162 game season since 2003. That was super exciting. And now with the Dolphins making it to the playoffs, having a shot at being the number one seed in the AFC, I just got to continue having faith in them. I've been a diehard of all these teams for a long time, specifically the Marlins and the Dolphins. But man, I cannot tell you how much I shit on them. I talk all the smack. I'm just like, wow, we're doing this good. We're this good here. And then once one negative thing happens, I'm like, it's over. The world's over. It's done. We're not doing anything, and I just give up on them. But I just need to continue having faith. There were so many times this year with the Marlins. I was like, yep, that's it. That's the nail in the coffin. We're done. And then they come back and they end up doing it. And then with the Panthers, I mean, they were down 3-1 to the friggin' Bruins, and they end up coming back and winning the series. And as for the Dolphins, when they lost that game to the Titans, I was like, that's it. That's gonna be our nail. That's it. That's our ninth life. It's over. We're not gonna do anything. I just need to continue having faith in them. So that's gonna be my thing. I'm gonna try and be a little bit nicer to my teams and just having faith in them.
Glad we're in this together. We'll keep each other honest. We'll keep
We
each other
will keep
honest
each
into
other
the new
honest.
year.
And as for the shout out, I guess I'll go with I'll stick with it. I always talk about my teams, man, but Jaime Jaquez, he had himself he gave himself and his family a great Christmas present in 30, dropping a 30 bomb. I think that was his first career one. Um
He
in
was
in the
11 for
game on
15, right?
something like that. Yeah, he
Cool.
had 30 points. What was it? 10 assists, 10 rebounds, one of them. I don't know which one it was.
He
But
balled
whatever.
out.
He balled out, and he's been balling out. He's put himself as to one of the top guys on the Heat this year, and yeah, I think that he's going to be like the guy that stays. I don't think the Heat trade him. I think if they're going
Oh.
to do any trades, coming up. It'll be with Nikola Jovic and Kyle Lowry and all that kind of maybe Duncan. I wouldn't be mad if Duncan was gone. I think that he's a great piece for any team to add. But if the Heat want to make a run at this championship, they're going to need a big three type of dude. They've got Jimmy, they've got Bam. I think they need to go out and get themselves another piece. Deontay Murray, I've seen that he's had some connections there. So, but Jaquez, he has been fantastic for them, and shout out to him all the way coming from UCLA all the way down to South Beach. He's been great, and kudos to him.
Absolutely. My shout out is America's team, the Streakers team, everybody's favorite team, former Hard Knocks team, Dan Campbell's love child. It's the Detroit Lions. They clinched their division for the first time since 1993. They've never clinched the NFC North because the last time they won their division was in 1993 when they won it as the NFC Central. So that's something that's crazy. I remember us talking actually about this at the beginning of the year. Was it possible? We both thought it was, and they've officially done it. They've really turned the tide this year. So impressive, what Jared Goff and company has done. Um, when you look back at the trade between the two quarterbacks, Stafford and Goff, it seems like, yeah, look, the Rams got a Super Bowl ring and they're in the playoffs this year. It looks like they've obviously, got the highest point of that trade. They've reached the pinnacle, so it's certainly worth it for them. But I think if you're a Lions fan, certainly a Lions diehard fan, you got to be happy with the way that things have shaken out. You have your quarterback of the future. Goff is going to be there for however long. I don't know what kind of playoff success they're going to have, but he's going to be there. And things are looking up for the Lions. They've had so many hurdles that they've jumped through, or so many get the monkey off their back moments over the last season and a half since they've been a much better team and turned things around like midway through last year. So it's something that's really great to see, and that's what the NFL is all about because it could be worst to first at no matter the time. It could be in the middle of the season, it could be at the draft, whenever. Teams can turn it around. We just saw the Browns get their stuff together this year when they signed Flacco. So something great to see, especially with a lower level franchise like the Detroit Lions. Sorry if that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but this is coming from a Bucks fan who's more than self-aware that we have uh, a poor franchise history. So great. Great time to be a Lions fan. Shout out to them. Now, cut for time and honorable mentions. Honorable mention to the South Alabama player that sucker punched some guy. Merry Christmas to him. That was pretty wild. Shout out to the Denver Broncos. Honorable mention for how confusing that this franchise is because at a certain point we declared them dead this season. Then we said that they're back. And now I don't know if Russell Wilson's going to be that starter, their starting quarterback next year because they are trying to make sure that he doesn't get his $37 million bonus next year. That's only happened a handful of times in the past, or at least in recent, memory. That, in my opinion, looks to be the nail in the coffin. They're going to start Stidham over the next 2 weeks. That's an interesting play. It doesn't have anything to do with talent. I believe Russell Wilson has 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. I mean, he's been much better, much improved this year. I think all of the rumors about Sean Payton and Russell Wilson not clicking seems to be closer to true than not. So that's something interesting. Um, and shout out Joel Embiid, who rested on Christmas Day and wasn't able to play a team over 500 once again and is feasting on lower level teams. Just throwing that out there. Also, shout out the Orlando Magic. Still balling. They've made it to the Christmas Day checkpoint, and I am hype. My New Year's resolution starts today. They're a very good team, and I'm believing in them. Shout out Paulo, shout out Franz. And I think that'll do it. I think that'll do it for us. Yeah, this has been another episode of the Streakers Podcast. I'm Patrick Previty. That's Mason Migliara. We will see you guys in 2024.